It was a typical day at the psychiatric hospital, but the atmosphere was always tense. I worked as a nurse in a psychiatric ward, where patients received care, but it was far from a comfortable environment. I had heard many stories about patients acting out unexpectedly, but I never imagined I'd become part of one myself. One of the patients was named Floyd, a man in his 30s. He was incredibly intelligent but struggled with his thoughts and had a history of violent outbursts. At first, Floyd seemed quiet and withdrawn. He spent most of his time reading, and when I talked to him, he spoke logically, leading me to believe he was just an ordinary guy. But over time, I began to notice something odd. One evening, as I was checking on the patients, I saw Floyd staring at one of his fellow patients without blinking. His eyes glowed with a strange intensity, and he moved his fingers in an eerie way, as if he was manipulating invisible strings. I felt a wave of unease but tried to brush it off. I knew that in this place, we always had to stay on guard. Then, strange things started happening. One night, as I was doing my rounds, I heard screams coming from Floyd's room. I rushed over and found the door slightly open. The room was dark, but I could see shadows moving inside. When I stepped in, I found Floyd sitting on the floor, muttering incoherent words, his eyes wide open. That's when I realized things were about to spiral out of control. Little did I know that night would mark the beginning of terrifying events that would stay with me forever. When I entered Floyd's room, I felt a chill in the air. He was mumbling incoherently, as if he was surrounded by another world. I approached him slowly, trying to calm him, but his voice kept rising. "Don't come any closer," he suddenly screamed, his eyes glowing with madness. It was clear that something had broken inside him. At that moment, fear crept into me. I tried to talk to him, to understand what was happening. "Floyd, are you okay?" But all I got was a look full of hatred, as if he was seeing something I couldn't. Suddenly, he shot up like an arrow and lunged toward me. That's when I realized I needed help. I shouted into my radio, "Need assistance in Floyd's room." Within seconds, my colleagues arrived, but things were getting worse. Floyd was in a full-blown frenzy. He started smashing everything around him, even the furniture that stood in his way. It was clear he was in a chaotic state, as if his mind was locked in an endless battle. When the team arrived, we tried to restrain Floyd together, but his screams echoed throughout the hospital. "Don't touch me! Don't touch me!" His words hung in the air, and he showed an unnatural strength, making it hard to hold him down. After several attempts, we finally managed to restrain him, but the damage had already been done. The next few hours were chaotic, yet I couldn't help but wonder what had brought Floyd to this point. How could one mind hold so much pain and conflict? It was terrifying, but also baffling. We thought we were helping, but we were facing something much bigger than just an outburst. It was a deep struggle beyond what we could comprehend. After things calmed down, we moved Floyd to the safety room. I sat at the nurse's station, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. That moment was the beginning of a deeper understanding of what can happen when the mind breaks from reality, and how things can take a dark turn. But little did I know, the events that followed would confront me with that darkness directly. After a chaotic night, calm finally returned to the hospital. Floyd was in the secure room, but the anxiety still lingered. I kept replaying the events of that night, thinking about his condition. How could a mind unravel so quickly? In the days that followed, the staff avoided talking about what had happened, but I was determined to understand it. One morning, I checked in on Floyd in his room. As I approached him, I saw him sitting silently, his eyes filled with tears. "Do you remember what happened, Floyd?" I cautiously asked. He looked at me deeply, a look that seemed to carry all the suffering he had endured. I couldn't control it, the voices were overwhelming, he replied in a broken voice. He began talking about his childhood, recounting the many traumas he had faced. He spoke about painful memories and the thoughts that clashed in his mind. The more he spoke, the more sorrow I felt for him. I realized I was looking at someone trapped in a maze of pain and suffering. As the days passed, I started noticing changes in Floyd's behavior. He seemed calmer, but I could feel that something wasn't quite right. One night, while making rounds, I heard Floyd's voice calling out, "Help me, I need to get out." His voice echoed through the halls, as if he were pleading for salvation. I rushed to his room, but what I found was shocking. He was trying to break the windows, as though something inside him was driving him to do it. In that moment, I understood that the surface changes didn't mean true stability. He was struggling with an uncontrollable inner turmoil. I called for the staff again, but this time was different. When we entered the room, Floyd was in a state of agitation once more. Even though we were able to restrain him, I realized that I couldn't just walk away. I felt a responsibility to help him, not just as an employee, but as a human being. Over time, I began working closely with his psychiatrist, and together we explored new treatment options for Floyd. He needed deeper psychological support, and that marked a pivotal moment in my career. It wasn't easy, but with the team's support and the right treatment, Floyd began to show significant improvement. He started talking more about his feelings and confronting his struggles instead of running from them. As I witnessed his progress, I felt like I was part of something meaningful, despite the challenges we had faced. That experience left a deep impact on me. I realized that every patient has a story, and the darkness some live in might just need a helping hand to pull them through.